8-week series. This is week 1, and we're going to cover some fundamental topics. I actually enjoy teaching this class, especially in the market conditions we see in most markets around the country. In other words, the importance of understanding how to master working with buyers in a low inventory market becomes more and more critical. There's no further evidence of this than what you see in, for example, agents, private groups on Facebook or other places where agents are complaining about the fact that I submitted 1 of 7 offers and now my buyer is frustrated and they think that I'm the wrong agent, or the buyer didn't want to pay over list price, any number of problems and people complaining about buyers. So what you're going to learn in the next 8 weeks, and Stephanie's going to get into this in a minute, is how to make sure you're working with the right buyer, how to make sure that your buyer understands market conditions, and how do you do this in such a way that you're in control of the process and you're having a predictable set of results. So with that, I'm going to jump to the next slide, and I know Stephanie wants to add a little bit in terms of the specifics. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hey, glad to be here this morning. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. So just wanted to cover just some of the things that we had, some of the highlights. We're going to teach you what we're going to teach you, then we're going to teach you, then we're going to tell you what we taught you. But a couple of things that we're going to cover in the 8 weeks are the 5-minute rule. And gosh, I've been in real estate for just over 10 years and 10,000 hours. And if I have heard this once, I've heard it 100 times. Buyers are liars. What a silly saying, isn't it? Buyers are liars. Well, it's not that buyers are liars. They don't know what they want because we're not asking the right questions. And if we're putting buyers in our car that are not motivated to buy to the next 60 or 90 days, and that's just an example, we just have to ask better questions, don't we, Kevin? That's all. That's the answer to every problem is just ask better questions.
Well, it certainly keeps you on track, that's for sure. I mean, when you start changing your mindset, as we'll talk about in these successive sessions, from you trying to convince a buyer to work with you to you being in charge of which buyers you decide to work with. And for some buyers, they disqualify themselves based on market conditions. Perfect example I mentioned before is a buyer that, for example, in a very low inventory market, let's say there's 1 or 2 months inventory in their price point and every listing is selling for over list price. And that buyer comes from a different market out of your area and they say, I'm not willing to pay more than 5 or 7% off below list price. Everything's selling for over list price. Well, they're disqualifying themselves out. They're never going to get to purchase in your market if it's a mismatch. So, but what else are we going to learn in the next 8 weeks?
Well, the 4 most important questions to ask, because we are a question-based coaching and consulting company. We really think that we give people the power by giving the right questions. So we're going to give you just, there's 4, maybe a few more questions that you have to ask every one of your leads from day one. From that first initial phone call. What's the most important questions you should be asking them? And it's not, are you enjoying the weather? So we've coached lots of teams and businesses and brokers and all over the country. And we're teaching everybody all over the country about those 4 most important questions that you have to ask. And we coached a really huge team. He used to be one of the top Keller Williams, well, he was the #1 Keller Williams agent in the country, and we actually helped him run his company about a year or 2 ago. And because we're so friendly here in Texas, we asked things like, so are you enjoying this nice weather today? First question. We had to unteach them, didn't we? We had to brainwash them on that is not the first question you ask, no matter how friendly we are in Texas. So, and then the 3-minute rule and the myths surrounding this mindset. We're going to really get into that, the 3-minute rule, the 5-minute rule, why it's so important when you have an IDX lead, or any lead for that matter, why it's so imperative that you're the first person to reach them. We're really going to dig into that. Why is it so important that we have to make this phone call? A new lead comes in, IDX, a Geeks lead, or any of your IDX solutions, why it's imperative that you reach out to these people in that first 3 to 5 minutes. And then 2 are the 2 market statistics that you have got to be sharing with your buyers from day one, explaining to them about current market conditions so you're setting expectations with them about what it takes to win in this market where there's low inventory. We had a pretty big team that we were coaching in a different part of the country, and and they'd never presented a CMA until they wrote the contract. And I bet you most of you are shaking your head going, well, that's what I do. Now, we need to present a CMA on current market conditions, whether it's a macro, a big market, or a micro market, say, for instance, Circle C here in Austin, that we have got to present this information to our buyers so they know what they're getting into on day one, not at time of offer presentation. And then the all challenging, it's an opportunity really, is the getting our buyers pre-approved with our mortgage lender partner, and how we get that done in the first conversation. No pushback. How we're going to have our lender give you a call to get you pre-approved. Oh, you're already pre-approved with Wells Fargo. We're going to give you those powerful questions to say to that prospect, suspect, soon-to-be customer, client, how you get them pre-approved with your mortgage lender, because we believe that the mortgage partnership relationship that you have is probably the most important, in addition to your coach, of course. So, and then also we're going to teach you how to get zero pushback from your buyers, how you're going to get them to sign a buyer loyalty agreement from day one. I make a commitment to you and only you. I'm not going to work with 4 or 5 agents. How you're going to get zero pushback from the clients that you choose that you want to be in business with. So exciting stuff. We're just thrilled to be here. Again, it's Buyer Bootcamp, Bigger, Better, Bolder. So, and then some bonuses that we're going to be sharing with you. Go ahead, dear. I'm sorry.
No, what I want people to be thinking about today is the level of depth of what you're learning. There's a misperception, which I'll get into in a few minutes here, about what's the difference between agents that consistently close 30, 40, 50 buy-side transactions without working themselves to death, and then agents that close very few buyers but yet work with a lot of them, meaning show property. And what I want you to be thinking about is, I need to go much deeper at my approach to the business than I've ever thought of, because usually agents gravitate to the buy side of the business because the perception is it's easier to handle this side, and that is in direct conflict with low inventory markets. You have to do a much more in-depth market conditions, expectations, and you have to say no to more buyers, even though buyers are more desperate, which makes it tougher. In other words, they're going to push you to go show them property, either when that's not appropriate, the timing's off, or they're not going to be able to buy. And so there's a number of things there, and we'll go into depth, and that's why for a lot of people the most common question we get about buyer mastery is, how can you spend 8 weeks and really 16 sessions on the buy side of the business? And even within Pure Vita Coaching, we have this debate periodically, and you can see we're still at 8 weeks about, can this be done in 4 weeks? Could it be done in 6? And the answer is, whether it's the buy side or the listing side, to get the level of depth of what we're covering, you can't get it done in less than 8 weeks. When you divide out and you see all of the material that we're going to cover and the depth at which we do this, it's like approaching professional football or another professional athletics. You have to go this deep to be that good, and it's mostly the fundamentals that are skipped. In other words, my phone rings, I'm on floor duty, and out showing property. And then I wonder, wow, I've done that a whole bunch of times, and I haven't closed very much business. So with that, let's talk about the bonuses, and then we'll get into what are the differences and what about mindset.
Yep. So just a few of the bonuses that we'll be sharing with you over a period of 8 weeks is, number one, is we have a buyer lead conversion script. That first initial phone call, hey, this is Stevie with, we'll say St. Louis Real Estate Today. We own an IDX solution up in St. Louis still. And I was just calling today to find out how long you've been looking for a home. That's the first thing we say to them, not, hey, how are you enjoying the weather? But we're going to be sharing with you what that script looks like. And we're also going to be sharing with you what the buyer consultation looks like. In other words, you say, so thanks so much for calling today. We'd love to meet with you to show you how we help buyers win in this current market conditions where there's low inventory and lots of buyers. But we're going to be sharing with you what that buyer consultation looks like. And guys, I want you to hear this. We're not really saying, it's perfect if you memorize this, but there is no reason in the world the way our buyer consultation is designed and what the handout looks like that you don't actually print it. You sit across from somebody in the coffee shop or at the office. I prepared some really important questions for you. Who is going to fault you for having questions written right in front of you? When I first got into real estate, I had an agenda for my sellers and I had an agenda for my buyers. I'm like, how can you go on an appointment to meet with somebody and not have an agenda? Kevin and I come from business. We come from business. And I would never think about sitting in front of a seller or a buyer without my questions already prepared and already written in front of me. And I tell them, these are the things we're going to cover. If you have any questions at the end, let me know. But I've got these, I mean, you can take notes on your presentation. Oh, take notes. So one of the most powerful things that we offer is the buyer loyalty agreement. It's not your buyer agency agreement that I know none of you are getting signed when you meet with a buyer. That buyer agency agreement that your broker requires that you sign, that usually gets turned in with a contract. We're going to be giving you what's called a buyer loyalty agreement, where you share with them your action plan and your expectations from them, as well as what they can expect from you. And this is how you keep buyers from going out and buying a new car, or crossing the threshold of new construction without you, or calling a for sale by owner without you. Because I know you're shaking your head, yep, I lost them in new construction before. We're going to get you to have this buyer loyalty agreement ingrained in your head, and you would never work with a buyer unless they sign a loyalty agreement with you. If they won't, kick them out of the car. When you're driving slow, kick them out of the car. And then last but not least, the 7-step process when a lead shows up. What we know is the truth about converting whether IDX leads or a signed caller or any leads that you're getting on your website, what that 7-step process is. And yes, it's calling them 6 times. What? We'll go over that later. So, Kevin, I'd just like to give a little housekeeping tips before we get started, and then we'll get ready and get into the real meat of climbing this mountain we call buyer mastery. Is that cool with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so just some housekeeping issues, guys. We meet every Tuesday at this number on the same link that you got from us this morning, and we're going to meet at 9 o'clock. We start promptly at 9. We run 45 minutes every Tuesday. Tuesday is Kevin and I in a presenting manner. So we're presenting. There's a question box on the, should be, Kevin, where would it be showing up on the screen where they could do a question? Answer the question.
It's on the edge of the webinar panel.
So on the edge of the webinar panel, you can see where you can post questions to us. So if you have a question, I'm watching the question screen. If you have a question, please feel free to jump in and ask a question. We want to keep these to 45 minutes because here's our aha, guys. We know you're all worth about $300 an hour. We know what we're worth. So we know that you're worth about $300 an hour. So we're going to keep these to 45 minutes. So just keep that in mind. We'll try to address every single question that you have, but we do want to be done with these things within 45 minutes so you can go on about your business. So we meet here every Tuesday, same time, same station, 8 weeks in a row. And then we also meet every Thursday, same time, same station, same call-in number, same, but there really is no need. Well, we're just not going to say that. We're also going to have the link, but we're going to review, we're going to do role-playing and scripts, just scripts and role-playing, no skill building as far as some of the things, the theory of business that we're going to talk about. But on Thursday, this is interactive. We call it open mic. It's not really open mic. I can't have all of you talking at the same time over our conference, but I want you to engage with us. I want you to feel confident, and we're going to repeat the question, and then we're going to address that question that you have for us every Thursday. So be sure to get really friendly with that question box. So every Tuesday and Thursday, 45 minutes on Tuesday. Thursday, we're together for 30 minutes. Quick in and out, 30 minutes. But we're going to be together with you twice a week for 8 weeks in a row. And then just so you know, these calls are being recorded. We have a PowerPoint. We will send you Tuesday's call and Thursday's call. Every Friday, you're going to have it in your inbox by noon. So you'll have the Tuesday call when we're working on the conceptual ideas of how Kevin and I feel about the buyer business, and then you're going to get the Thursday call where we're doing maybe some role-playing or just answering some questions that you have about a particular script on Thursday. You'll get those every Friday. In addition to the webinar, the PowerPoint that you see, we'll be sending that to you as well as an Adobe file. So if you want to go back and look at our notes and our presentation, you don't want to go online to listen to us, you can always go back to the PowerPoints. What did they say? What's the questions? Because all of that will be in the PowerPoint as well. And then you'll be getting from time to time as we bring on the buyer consultation that week. You're going to get everything sent to you on Friday. that's tied into the, we've got it. Guys, we practice this. Kevin and I practice our buyer mastery presentation. We have a PowerPoint. We have an agenda we follow. Do you think less of us because we're prepared? No. I want you to have that same mindset with your clients, whether they're buyers or sellers. You show up, you have an agenda, you've got handouts, you've got whatever, you look like a real business person, and that's how we treat the real estate business. So other than that, other than let's go, Kevin, I'm excited about doing this again. This is bigger, better than it's ever been before. I think the price is going to go up at least twice as much when we roll this out again towards the end of the year. So thank you all for being here today, and let's just get started, Kevin. So excited to be here with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a little bit of background and context. As Stephanie mentioned, I used to work with a very large team. We would close 500 to 600 transactions a year, ranging between 50–60% of the volume at various points of buy-side transactions. So think of it in the context of 30 to 50 pendings at any given point in time. We had 9 buyer agents. So one of the things that I was always tasked with by the 2 rainmakers that owned the business was trying to improve our success rate. They would generate, as you could imagine, a tremendous amount of leads because they used to carry anywhere from 80, 100, 115 listings. So signed calls, it looked more like a brokerage than a team. So my tasking on trying to figure out how to make things more efficient allowed me, along with our business, as Stephanie mentioned, with owning a large IDX website that would generate 400 or 500 signups a month, to take a look at what works and what doesn't work. You know, you see the title here, Climbing the Mount Everest of Buyer Mastery. There really is a track, and what we did is we built 2 different scenarios. There's if you're in the before model, and it'll look one way, and then you're in the after. And as you'll see, the before and the after are vastly different in terms of success rate, the chaos, the drama, the amount of thrashing around and success. It would be like if you went to go climb Mount Everest, you didn't have a Sherpa, you had no preparatory work, and you just said, I'm just going to attack it with effort and vigor, and I'm just going to go for it. So when you look at the first bullet here, agent closing 1 to 2 buyers a month, despite the fact that they have 10+ prospects in a month. In other words, they have plenty of opportunity. They talk to lots and lots of people. This could be floor duty. You could be part of a team. You could have sign calls because you have a number of listings, and they're not following any kind of system or model. In other words, it's cluttered and a chaotic approach. It's not a very defined process. When you looked at the buyer agents, and it didn't matter if it was my team in St. Louis or the team that I was working with in the previous market, or any of our coaching clients, there's a certain amount of chaos and drama and thrashing around that occurs, just like my example of attempting to climb Mount Everest. And we're going to use this Mount Everest theme to talk a little bit about the process that you have to follow and why it's so important, because part of it is just getting your mindset correctly oriented to the fact that you're in charge of this process. And there aren't 50 different ways to close 30 buyer transactions. There's really one way, and I'll tie that down in a minute. Whether you want to call it coaching or training or a model, typical agent that thrashes around doesn't close a lot of business. Not only are they not following a model and it's full of clutter, chaos, and drama, but they don't follow any kind of coaching or methodology where there's any kind of, think of professional athletes. Like imagine that a professional football team had no coaches. They just showed up on Sunday and they were going to play. Again, agents run their buy side of business just that way. And typically what we saw, and this was a little different in the large team that I mentioned at the beginning of this, the reliance on walk-in, sphere of influence, and repeat business. In other words, you'll see agents that when they push back on what we're going to teach you, say, well, but this is a friend, a family member, it's somebody in my sphere of influence, it's a referral. I couldn't ask these questions. Well, that, as you'll see as we develop this over 8 weeks, is the mantra of chaos. And we had a buyer agent in our business in St. Louis that would get a fair amount of sphere of influence, and she struggled with this and never got to more than 10 to 12 closings a year.
Yeah.
Yet she was busy as could be, was always working with people, and yet we had another buyer agent, and he would follow what I'm going to show you in the next slide, and he would close 30-plus transactions. She was probably 4 or 5 times more experienced in terms of tenure in the business than he was. You know, if you looked at her, you might think she's more sophisticated, you might think she's more polished than he was. But as you'll see as I get into the next slide, it's the model and the mindset that makes all the difference. So here's what it looks like. And obviously there's seasonality, and that's where if you use the math that I'm talking about, 30 to 50 transactions is fairly typical for agents to follow this. Now, what happens if you do go and run like a professional athlete, or you're climbing Mount Everest like a professional climber? You're going to peak at, during high season, 7 buyers a month. And you're working with significantly fewer buyers. And more often than not going out more than twice. And we'll teach you over the next 8 weeks how that occurs. Because there's 2 different things you have going here, which is you have to disqualify buyers either based on market conditions or their willingness to participate in market conditions. But they have to get pre-approved, as we'll talk about quite in depth during this series. And if you're doing that in reverse, meaning you're trying to convince people to work with you, you'll have plenty of people that want to work with you, especially in a low inventory market. But you'll also have to take them out from show them too many houses. They're going to be out more than twice. And that's the enemy of you being able to actually have a successful buy side of the business, because the buy side of the business is highly inefficient. In other words, going out twice with a buyer should be about the max for the vast majority of your buyers, especially in a low inventory market. If they think that they're going to have 6 months to wait till the perfect house comes out and it's a low inventory market, 2-3 months of inventory, you probably should have that agent, as we'll talk about, or that buyer work with another agent, because they're going to drive somebody crazy, and you just want to make sure that it's not you. Because especially if they lose their perfect house, and we'll talk about why that occurs when we get further into sessions. So following a proven model based on prospecting and lead follow-up, in other words, lead generation and lead follow-up, is the success. You have to sort through enough people. And in a perfect world, what you see is, although an agent who closes 30 to 50 buyers has fewer prospects they're working with, they have talked to many, many more people in a given month to select the people that match up with them based on what they want to do, they being the agent, as far as what type of buyer am I going to work with, and does this buyer understand current market conditions. And the reason that this business development of lead generation and lead follow-up is so important is, as we'll talk about in successive sessions, the follow-up portion. In other words, you've had an initial conversation and you need to have successive conversations before you go look at property, is absolutely critical, because 7 out of 10 of your closings will come from those successive second or later conversations. In other words, there's a reason that, as we'll talk about speed of response, which Stephanie touched on one of the bullets, you have to get to them quickly, but it's unrealistic to think that you're going to be so great on the phone, this is another misconception, that you're going to convert everybody in the first phone call. So focus on disqualification and setting market conditions is critical. You can't get through this process if you don't understand that you are disqualifying people, either based on themselves, financing, or market conditions. And you need to actually use technology. You need to use a methodology. When it talks about coaching and accountability, we're going to teach you the right way to approach this in the next 8 weeks. This is like, as Stephanie described it, as an intensive 8-week boot camp for a reason. We're taking years and years and 10,000s of successive conversations with buyers. Remember, you think about the amount of volume I was talking about in that first team, plus the amount of buyer inquiries, just in St. Louis alone, not to mention all of our clients on the coaching side, we've got, 10, 12, 15,000 people that have ever signed up on our website up there. We've done it wrong every way you can possibly imagine. And that's, for any coach or trainer to tell you that they've got it all figured out because they don't fail, would not be very candid with you. Believe me, we've tried every different way to break the model, and we did it highly successfully by making lots of mistakes. What we're going to teach you over the 8 weeks is how to do it right and avoid a lot of the common mistakes. And here's the bad news. 99.9% of what you see out on social media, including these Facebook discussions, is wrong. There's no vetting. There is no basically ability to tell whether this person's valid. Do they have any frame of reference that you should be relying on their information? They rely way too much on technology, which we'll talk about, to try and automate things. They're just not accurate. In other words, if it was about buying the latest and greatest tools, let's just take professional athletes. They don't trade out their helmets and their pads and their cleats and all that stuff every week to try something new. Yet, if you go online and you listen to the nonsense that's out there, they spend all their time talking about the cleats, the pads, and the uniforms. They don't even focus on what are the fundamental drills we need to practice, which is what, if you watch a professional athlete, that's what they do every week. They spend the majority of their time watching film, studying the competition, studying their market, if you will, and then practice on all of the fundamentals. And that's why we talk about this scripts, coaching, and accountability as a way to do this, because the challenge is we're talking about climbing the mountain. We're talking about getting from the agent I described, closing 10, 12 transactions. There's plenty of agents that don't even get to that level. You have to have your mindset correct, because if your thought process is, oh, well, yeah, but I need to work with this buyer because they came from this source, or this is a neighbor or a friend or somebody I know from tennis, and I need to do this. There's a great quote here from Commander Mark Devine, and if you want to write down the name of a great book to read on this, Commander Mark Devine was somebody who was hired by Naval Special Warfare, and I'll spend a few minutes talking about why this is important. And what they discovered was it wasn't the physical work, just like it's not the technology, that made the difference. It has to do with your emotions, your ability to control and keep on track from a mindset standpoint that allows you to get to high levels of performance. And it's keeping the clutter and the nonsense out. And so when the Naval Special Warfare world, specifically the Navy SEALs, what they discovered was Mark Devine had a process that got the pass rate for Navy SEAL training from 15% to 85%. And if you want to read The Way of the SEAL, which is his book, he talks about the mindset from a business standpoint, less about the Navy SEALs. And what they discovered was it wasn't more push-ups, pull-ups, and running. It was all mindset training. It was all fundamentals of how to climb a mountain. And he uses this analogy, like I'm going to for a few minutes here, because it's important. Because there's nothing that's going to get you off track faster than if you go through the process of, I know this is what they taught me in this buyer mastery boot camp, but now the phone rings, it's a sign call, and they want to see a house, and you're excited because there's an opportunity because you don't have that many opportunities right now. And you run out and start showing them properties. They're not pre-qualified with your lender. They don't know market conditions. They're not in your process from the standpoint of what we're going to teach you about buyer consultations. Well, your mindset just took you off track. You're not going to be in a position to climb the mountain. Anything you want to add to that, Stephanie, before we get into some more specifics about mindset?
No, just a comment that for those of you that are on this call, many of you, not all of you, are in our private mastery group for Pura Vida. We've only got like 60 people in there. We'll never have a big mastery group with 7,000 because there aren't that many people that excel that get this. But you saw that I shared, we have a client who just got back from France. We have a client left for London yesterday, but we have a client that just got back from France. And I love it because he climbed Mont Blanc, the tallest mountain in Europe. And the only way he could have climbed that mountain is to what? Have in practice, be prepared. He took all his equipment, his cleats, all the things, all the tools that you mentioned. I mean, he brought his tools and everything that he needed, his uniform, you know, to show up to climb Mont Blanc. But he said the reason, the real reason that he feels so good about it is he didn't really do the base camp like he should have, but he climbed it. And he said the only thing that kept him going was, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Now, we're not saying that this Mount Everest for you should be an adverse reaction to dying, But it's important that you understand about the climbing the mountain and what it takes to, again, it's about mindset. I think, Kevin, probably we spend 50% of our time with our mastery or one-on-one guys talking about mindset, don't we?
Well, and that's a misperception. Absolutely. If you read this quote here, where extraordinary results, we're talking about 30 to 50 transactions without spending 7 days a week on it and having your family put up a missing poster for you. It's getting rid of old ways of thinking, acting and believing, and getting new ones in. Why do we spend a whole entire session on this? And I can tell you, this is another area that we have lots of debate on at Pura Vida, and it's still in here for a reason. One of the groups of people that we spend a lot of time with are Special Forces warriors, because you can learn so much about mindset success and how they stay on track from people that are outside of. In other words, it's not real estate agents or mortgage brokers or other people that you're going to learn a set of skills from. Just like if you can spend a lot of time with professional athletes that are at the level of playing in the NFL or NBA, or they're playing professional hockey, etc. You learn that if you spend enough time with them, their mindset's just completely different. They stay so on track because they have gotten rid of an entire belief system, and they've got a new belief system. And as you see in the picture here, this is a sign on the way up to Everest. And we're going to talk about something I mentioned a few minutes ago, because this is, as Stephanie just talked about from one of our clients climbing Mount Blanc, when you look at climbing Mount Everest, many, many people have failed trying many different routes. And the reason that there's only one route in this picture is a couple of reasons. And why is it in here? Because you have to understand, and this is for some people very, very difficult. For some of us, whether we coach them, for some of the buyer agents on teams that we've either had or coached, or our own team, they don't want to buy into this. And why is this entire week one series about mindset? Is if you can't get your head around the fact that there's only one way, one route with multiple steps from base camp all the way to the summit of getting to that level. In other words, if you say, I really want to master the buy side of the business, I do want to get 30 to 50 transactions closed a year, just on the buy side. I don't want to take people out more than twice. I want to be in charge of who I work with, not have them in charge. I don't want people being the type of buyers that I don't want to work with. The reason that there are a set of steps here and a single path is that's the route that's been proven that works. What we're going to teach you in Buyer Mastery is the route that works. What doesn't work is just like in what Commander Devine figured out in Naval Special Warfare is they don't just give people a set of training. They don't give them a set of things that they need to focus on. In other words, do more push-ups, run more miles, do this, do that. It's so much of its mindset. And if you look at some of the pictures, and just as an aside, I have a special affection, and Stephanie would never do this, for this picture that's in the upper left of the screen you see there, which is basically a way of training mindset. And what you see there is something that I did a lot of. I was a rescue swimmer early in my life. And they tie your hands behind your back, they tie your ankles, and they put you in the deep end of the pool, and you have to bob. You go down to the bottom, and then you push off, and you get yourself to the surface, which you see some of the people in the picture, and then you go back down, and you continue to do that. What it's training you to do is to get comfortable in the water and get your mind over the fact that you need to panic. And it's a way of weeding things out. There is no physical effort to that. I mean, most of you could probably go to the bottom of the pool, push off, get to the top, your head gets over the surface of the water. And it has to do with, there's no such thing as perfection, only perfect effort. In other words, you're going to start to, in this series for the next 8 weeks, emulate perfection, because we're going to teach you the steps. If you buy into the fact that I have to get my mindset out of the nonsense I hear on Facebook in these discussions, what I hear around my office. In other words, we're going to do the same thing for real estate professionals that Commander Devine did for Naval Special Warfare, which is teach you to get at that 85% pass rate, which is 30 to 50 transactions closed. not the 15%, which is I work 7 days a week. I got buyers in charge of what I'm doing, not me being in charge of what they're doing, and I close very few buyers despite the fact that I'm out showing property all the time. Anything you want to add to this, Stephanie? Because I know that you don't come from any background in this, yet you get to spend a lot of time with some of these warriors that we.
Well, we've got an interesting we have an interesting tribe of friends, but I love the no such thing as perfection, only perfect effort. Write that down, guys. There is no such thing as perfection, only perfect effort. Or as my coach, I have a business coach, who said, sometimes done is better than perfect. Done. And Kevin and I kind of embrace that mentality. I'm not saying that we ever launch anything that's not perfect. Well, it's not perfect. It's not perfect, guys. We're not perfect. But we just know that sometimes done is better than perfect. But I love that. Really, truly, I hope you've written that down. There's no such thing as perfection for those of you who are high S&C, only perfect effort. Give me some effort. Show me some effort. Show me that you understand. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it. So, no, just keep going, babe. No, this is awesome. I love this stuff, and I love it. And just really, just full disclosure, we have a lot of friends who are warriors. We have some cool people in our tribe. And Kevin's really, really, really passionate about these kinds of things. But I love it that we take this same approach that the Navy SEALs take to what they do for a living to our real estate business. Okay?
Well, it's almost the same mindset, which is that they're not looking for people to define their world. They define their world. And as you see in the slide here, there is a 20 times factor. You know, you have to embrace the suck. What does the suck look like in buyers? You're going to have to do business development, which means talk to a number of buyers, whatever the number is for your market, and you're sourcing of buyers to the point where you find the right set of buyers to work with. You're going to have to do all that, follow up, and have successful conversations with them, because there is no easy way out. The easy way out in these pictures is the ringing of the bell. As you read The Way of the Seal, that bell is always there. You see it's in these pictures, and you see the helmets on the right there from each person in that class that's given up. Now think about your real estate office. Think about the marketplace. Think about the number of people that have rung the bell and given up. And if you gravitate towards that model, it's like trying to climb Mount Everest using an undefined path. Well, that's how people die. Now, Stephanie, the client came back and said, I was worried about dying. Why was he worried about dying on Mount Blanc? What happened while he was on Mount Blanc?
Well, there's one part of his trip where he's on I don't know how many tens of thousands or, feet they're up, but he's climbing where on both sides of him there are drops, 5,000 feet. And there was enough room to walk that was shoulder width. That was it. With $5,000 drops, could you imagine? There's no way. I don't even want to get up on the roof, let alone climb somewhere where there's just enough room for my shoulders to get by with 5,000-foot drops on both sides. Kevin, 9 people died that week. Died. Climbing Mont Blanc. What, are you kidding me? But he had the mindset. He knew in his mind, not only did he not want to die, but he had something to prove to himself. He had something to prove to himself that he was going to get this done. That I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it right, because I don't want to die. So he needed to know what's the right way. Well, it's just like we showed you on the summit to this particular mountain, or your particular mountain, whatever, metaphorically, your mountain. But he knew that, and here's how he got there, honey. Sorry, for those of you who have never been on our calls before, Kevin and I are partners and husband and wife, so I do call him honey. But he was with a guy who was 55 years old who had done it before. He took a coach with him. He brought his coach with him. And Mark is mid-30s, and he said, this 55-year-old guy kicked my butt. But he took his coach with him. So any left turn, right turn, off 10 degrees, what have you, he had this guide with him who had done it before. So if you want to hang out and you want to learn how to do it right, go hang out with people who have done it before and have a system that you can replicate. Hence the reason you're with us today, right?
Well, and it's this 20x factor that comes from
Yeah.
the mindset, understanding there's a single path. In other words, once Naval Special Warfare hired Commander Devine to get from 15% pass rate to 85%, they revamped what they were doing. They spend much more time on mindset. Now, there's the physical necessities of what you see in those pictures of crawling around the sand and the mental toughness that comes from trying to basically prove people. The 20 times factor is you can do significantly more than what you think you're capable of if you can strengthen your mindset, understand the path and what you're trying to do. It's the same way that double sessions start with professional athletes in the preseason. They have to condition them and prove to them that they can get to a level where Sunday becomes easy when they're playing football, for example, compared to the practice and the amount of effort they put on before. Anything you want to add before we talk about the homework and then get into what we're covering next week?
No, no, I just hope that everybody who's here this morning understands that we mean business. We mean business, and we call it like we see it. And some of the paths that some of you have chosen in the past, or maybe you're on now, well, we're going to kind of unwind that, and as one of my clients says, brainwash you a little bit about the truth about working with buyers. And some of you are going to be like trying to shake it off and try to do it the old way, but we're going to stay in touch with you for 8 weeks to keep you on track, because there only is one way, and it's not a fancy CRM. Just saying. So now let's kind of talk them a little bit more.
Yeah, you can't out technology fundamentals the same way that football teams, hockey teams, or baseball, et cetera, or even the NBA don't do this. You can't do this. It's not a matter of, God, if I just learn these special words to say. And that's why it's much more about the fundamentals and the mindset. So 3 homework items for you. One is to find your Mount Everest in success. If you want to really do some extra credit homework, go buy Commander Mark Devine's book, The Way of the SEAL, and read it. It's a quick read. And you'll learn about the fact that he was completely baffled when he went through Naval Special Warfare training himself and inadvertently discovered that it was about his mindset, about the fact that he was very clear on his Mount Everest, what was success, whereas the guy that was an absolute monster from the standpoint of physical strength and what his perception was of what he needed failed the first week of training. You have to define where you're going. Your success in buyer mastery, in other words, what is success going to look like to you? Are you going to close 30 transactions in the next 12 months? Is it 20? Is it 50? In other words, what's your Mount Everest look like so you can stay very, very clear on what that is? And the reason that the perfect morning ritual is in here is that as you read the book, and we'll be talking about it throughout this entire series, if you don't start out right, in other words, if the chaos starts and you're trying to figure out what you're doing in the morning on the fly, and you don't have a morning ritual, you're going to have to get a new morning ritual. And I'm only going to spend about 30 seconds on this. And like I said, if you want extra credit, go read the book, and we'll be spending some time on it from a standpoint of calendars and other things as far as what these agents do that have mastered buyer work. The morning ritual is the most important part of what you do. The morning ritual is critical because if you don't get your mind right and you're dumping in a bunch of garbage, it's garbage in, garbage out. And if your day starts out with, well, I'm just going to let it unfold and I'm going to get into email, I'm going to get on social media and do all sorts of chaotic activity, you need a new perfect morning ritual. You need to think about what are the things I need to be doing in the morning. How do I journal? How do I read my affirmations? How do we go through a lot of these different things that we need to do? And, you know, as a bonus, we should probably send them, Stephanie, some examples of some affirmations and an example morning ritual as I read through this. It'll make more sense when you read the book, but for those of you that don't get the book, we'll send you an example of some affirmations and what a morning ritual might look like. Now, the last one, homework-wise, is important. Analyze your market. Everything we do going forward is going to get more tactical. It's always going to have this Mount Everest mindset portion to it, but it's going to get more tactical. What do you say to buyers? How do you select the right ones to work to? And part of that, as we've talked about, that third leg of the stool, if you will, is understanding your market conditions. We can't tell you what your market conditions are in your market. You have to start analyzing it for your market. And the reason that is so critical is you need to start this as a practice. The same way as you heard me talk about, professional athletes go through and they study film of their competitors. They study film of their market, if you will, because their market changes every week. If I'm a football player, I'm playing a new person I'm matched up with and a new team I'm matched up with. Your real estate market changes too, so you need to be analyzing it. Is it low inventory? Is it high inventory? What are things selling for from a list to sale price? Start looking at your market and thinking about how would you explain that to a buyer. We're going to give you a framework by which to explain how things operate in a given market so that you can then translate it to your actual conditions. But this is one that I see more agents just skip because they like to give it a very generic term. Well, we're on a low inventory market. Things are selling quickly. That's not going to cut it if you want to climb your Mount Everest and actually do some volume, because that is the mantra of a buyer taking control of the conversation and saying something to you that is not connected with market conditions. You have to understand and analyze your market. So we're going to wrap up this week with a quick review of what we're covering next week. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We're going to get into this just so you understand what's coming next week. Like I said, we're going to get much more tactical. The key issues in buyer mastery. In other words, not all buyers are created equal. We're going to get into that. What's the difference between lead generation and lead follow-up? In other words, the business development activity that is so core and fundamental. Effective lead follow-up. In other words, how do you do this? And it ties into the last bullet on here, which is many people either work on a team or have their own IDX website. They do pay-per-click. They've got CRM systems. In other words, how do you maximize your ROI without getting off into the weeds? We're going to talk about that as well. Talk about the pre-qualification versus just taking people out. I touched on that today with you get an opportunity time call or a sign call, and now you're out showing property. We're going to start to get very tactical. And the reason this course is 8 weeks, 2 sessions per week is as you get into what we cover in session 2, the comment I hear most frequently is, that is probably more than I've ever had taught to me in a single week by any and all trainers I've done collectively. This is the fundamentals, if you were a professional athlete in football, that the coaches would spend all their time on. Because if you get nothing other than what we're going to cover next week, you're probably getting 70–80% of what you need to do to succeed. You're going to look at the drapes are going to be pulled back, the curtains pulled back, and you're going to realize that the people on Facebook, for example, that are touting this IDX website's better than this, only do this, drop this into this CRM and this action plan, just buy this system and use my letters and it works, are absolute fools. It is not what makes the difference. And those agents are not the ones that are closing a lot of business. Now, they may approach it and give you a top-line number and say, oh, yeah, we closed 500 transactions, and you find out that they've got 29 people on their team. And the number of closings looks more like 10 to 12. In other words, they're not climbing Mount Everest with anybody. They're all running around at base camp, and they don't have a plan. So we're going to get into that in detail. The other stuff we're going to cover is equally important next week, objections versus conditions, and objection handlers for prospecting with buyers. Here's the problem. One of the things I have to unhook, and this is one of those mindset things, is that people will try and apply the wrong scenario. In other words, they go to a training and they say they learn something that is some form of fancy words, objection handler, and they're trying to do it with somebody who doesn't have any business being out in the car and looking at houses. And they're like, well, it didn't work. I was on the phone with this buyer and I told them what you suggested I say, and it didn't work. They said no. We're going to tell you next week exactly why that happens and why you should be looking at it as a good sign. In other words, you may be trying to use something that is a mismatch with a particular buyer. That buyer may be responding that way because they're just not qualified to be in the market. It's the wrong time. Anything you want to, as we wrap up, because I know we went a couple minutes over today, Stephanie, you want to add to get people ready for next week?
No, just excited. Brooke shared she's going to change her screensaver to embrace the suck. I think that's great.
Well, absolutely. Well, because, the embrace the suck, and I'll wrap up with this, is the fundamental. And, you know, as Stephanie mentioned, we hang out with a lot of lawyers. And I do it for a couple of reasons. One, you know, I believe in supporting veterans and people that keep us from evil. But also, you can learn so much from somebody that's outside of your normal realm. In other words, there's much less to learn running around with our peers in our office. And that's why we recommend reading this book, The Way of the SEAL by Commander Devine. It's so interesting to watch how they handle problems, how they approach things, and for the most part, how calm they are, and how methodical they are, and how they problem solve, and how they handle things. I mean, have you ever seen any of these lawyers that we hang out with ever get worked up about just about anything, even when they are worked up about something? Wouldn't know it from what? No. So embracing the suck is the fact that they've broken through on that. They know they have a certain amount of work they got to do. Now, what we're going to teach you in Buyer Mastery is what are the things you got to do the 28 times factor? What do you have to do to your morning ritual and your mindset, and how do you approach the business? So with that, we will be back on Thursday morning. We're going to get into some Q&A on this. We'll probably go through very quickly a little quick role play just so you can start getting your head around how do you interact with a buyer and some of the issues, and having some of the questions come up, and then we'll dive in deeper in successive weeks on specifics. Anything else right now, Stephanie, before we wrap up?
Yeah, just one more thing, Mark. The name of the book is The Way of the SEAL. The Way of the SEAL. Got it?
And it's
okay.
Commander Mark Devine, Way of the SEAL. You can get it right on Amazon, either on a Kindle or a paperback. It's also available if you go to your local Barnes & Noble or one of the other bookstores.
Yep. Okay. Guys, we'll see you on Thursday. Same time, same station for 30 minutes for scripts and role-playing and just general questions. So see you on Thursday. Thanks so much.